Greetings, members one and all of the Salivation Nation. How gold and silver can save you from counterparty risks, and also the other risks that are associated with transactions, both financially and withholding gold and silver. That's the subject of today's video. Counterparty risk. How do you define that? Well, essentially, it's the chances one takes when you associate with a financial transaction where the other party doesn't meet its obligations. And that could be in the form of dividend payments or criminal activity, or risk associated with a loss tied in with an investment. At least that's kind of how I see it in terms of the risk that are associated with the being dependent on another entity. And holding gold and silver, as most of you know, is a way to avoid that counterparty risk. And that is one of the largest selling points, I believe, in holding gold and silver, because you're not dependent on anyone else or any other financial institution. The metals themselves, they have an intrinsic value that far exceeds any risk, at least what most of us do believe, that come with interacting in some of these other exchanges or financial institutions, investments, and the like. But that does not say that holding gold and silver should discourage folks from engaging in other practices where they can take these risks. Because sometimes these risks can pay off, and they can pay off big. However, for those like me that are risk averse, we like to kind of take more of the conservative approach and be able to preserve our value. So the one question or concern that people may say, well, if you hold gold and silver, especially if you bought at a particular period of time when the prices were high and you've lost money, they've literally gone down in price, how is that not risky? Well, it is risky in a sense that, if you just look at it from a pure dollar standpoint, yes, you've lost money. And there is a risk associated with that loss. But gold and silver are long-term holdings. And they essentially, there are times when the volatility is as such that through a particular period of time, you may find that the price may decrease with gold and silver that you hold. In other words, an extreme scenario may be an ounce of silver may have cost $48 in 2011, and in 2018 it may have gone to $14. Well, that's quite a big loss if you bought it in 2011, and in 2014 or 2018 it is down to $14 an ounce. But the thing is to keep in mind is that the actual metal that you hold in your hand of the silver has that intrinsic value, and if you hold it and you are accumulating more in different periods of times, the dollar cost average will work out so that you are essentially preserving your wealth, and it's not dependent on any other entity that could possibly devalue the dollars that you put into it or other currencies. So, for instance, a dollar in 2011 was worth a lot more than it is in 2018. And so, with that being said, one can say of the case, well, then you've lost a whole lot more. But really, in a sense, when you think about the overall and how the dollar has lost its value over the years, holding gold and silver, it will essentially work itself out with inflation and be adjusted as such, so that if you look at a chart over a long period of time, you will see that essentially they have preserved their wealth. their value. Their value is not always tied to price, and there are anomalies as such. I believe in 2011, silver and gold were both overvalued, especially silver. And I believe also in 2018 that silver and to some extent gold were undervalued. And so you're going to find anomalies as such. But in the end, when you hold these, you are eliminating counterparty risk, and you're not relying on any other institution, because they are holding and preserving the value of the metals contained in therein. That intrinsic value eliminates that counterparty. And with that being said, you look at the state of the system that we're involved in today, and I think that's the true tale of the tape, so to speak. In other words, you look at all the nations around the world. All the nations around the world, by and large, for the most part, are deficit spending, adding to debt. And the United States certainly is probably the king of all of them. We've added so much to the debt, $22 trillion. We're getting very close to it. And every year we spend more and more. And we print more and more money. Quantitative easing is an example of that has been happening 3 times over the past decade here. And what do we have to show for it? We have many of our institutions and financial systems are kind of propped up by this printing press of money. And there's something to be said for fiat, and that's the designation, that the decree that this currency is to be used as an exchange, but there's a counterparty risk. We are that counterparty risk associated with the dollar, though we use it, is as such that dollar is we're beholden to the institutions that have created that dollar, the U.S. government and the Federal Reserve. And with gold and silver, we're not beholden to any of those institutions. It's free. It is completely and freely independent of them. And I think that's the one aspect that frees us, and that makes it worth it. That makes that price difference between 2011 and 2018 well worth it, because in the end we know that really they are undervalued, because the way the system is operating with the dollar and the debt that has been building up year after year, no matter the administration, no matter the party in control, it just gives us all the more faith that we're doing the right thing and holding these metals. And that is a way we averse risk. Now, there is risk. Make no mistake, there is risk in holding precious metals, but it's not counterparty. And that's what we're going to talk about next. The risk in holding precious metals is how you hold them. There's and with the age of technology and where things are going with communication, with transactions, instant transactions, there's ways that you leverage these precious metals in our day-to-day transactions. I believe that there's going to come a day, and you've heard me talk about it in videos quite a while now, where I've talked about how precious metals will be used with the blockchain, where you have a digital cryptocurrency based off of gold and silver. I think that is probably the future, and that's where it's going to probably be heading. In certain times, you have places like APMEX and Provident Metals and other bullion dealers that are using the blockchain as a technology to be able to sell precious metals that are stored somewhere else that you can redeem for products and physical down the line in whatever form you so desire. And I think that is probably where the future of this is going to be. There are risks associated with that, because the saying, if you don't hold it, you don't own it. And that really is the case. We've seen it in Venezuela, where the Bank of England has refused to release the gold that the Maduro regime is requesting. And so the same could be said whenever you purchase digital gold in the form of cryptocurrencies or other bullion holdings and the like. You don't actually have the gold in your hand. It has been promised to you. It's a promissory transaction. And any kind of promissory transaction, there's going to be risk associated with it, and to actually get it. Every time you buy physical precious metals, the time it takes to you to actually get the item in your hand, you are at risk. You're at the mercy of the postal service. You're at the mercy of the bullion dealer who sold you the pieces to actually come through with their obligation. And so, in a sense, because it's a financial transaction, there is a temporary counterparty risk associated with precious metals until you actually get them in your hand. Now, the other risk associated with holding precious metals are the security of having them in your possession, or, in my case, having it spread out in different locations, whether you may be dependent on another party, person, family member, friend, or what have you that stores them for you. Well, you've got to be able to have access until you actually have them in your hand or holding them in your possession. You're really at there is still some risk involved with these precious metals. The other aspect of holding precious metals, if you hold them all in your possession in a safe, the most secure way, is obviously theft in one form or another. And so there are steps, and there's videos that talk about that, but definitely take steps to be safe and secure. Don't publicize that you have precious metals, and there's a lot of different things you can do to be secure. I think having a great store of ammunition and guns, and with the knowledge of how to use those weapons to protect yourself, and security systems and the like, there's all kinds of things that you can do to minimize risk. But in life, there always is some risk in one form or another. It just so happens that with precious metals, though the price may fluctuate, as I mentioned earlier, in the end, you're protected by the intrinsic value, and that intrinsic value may not necessarily be reflected in the price. And so that's the disparity with the example I used earlier from 2011 to 2018, from $48 down to $14, with silver being the best example of that huge disparity in price. But nonetheless, the value that's in these metals, and the fact that it is essentially, when you buy precious metals as a form of savings, as a hedge, you are ripping yourself from the financial situation, from the financial and system that we are a part of today. And by the way, just because I mentioned that as the system and the undervaluing and what's involved in there does not mean that we should not transact in that system. We have to, obviously, in order to get these precious metals. We are dependent on the dollar, and we should use these dollars and this as a currency, as a way to interact and also use it to our advantage. This video isn't by no means against investing in the stock market or involving yourselves in the system. Let's use this system as we can and be cautious in it to our benefit. Those that invest in the stock market hold IRAs, and I'm also a proponent of saving money. I believe we should save money in a bank, what little interest it does pay, as an emergency fund as we need it. So there you go. I hope this made sense. Counterparty risk, eliminating it really with gold and silver, and the other risks that are associated with precious metals and financial transactions. Post your thoughts below. Love to see what you guys think about this particular subject. I'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to y'all for watching, and encourage you to please rate, comment, and subscribe.